Welcome, friends. I'm Yvonne Davis. I'm an author, astrologer, and life transformation coach. And this is an ongoing series called 2020 Astrology. I'm talking specifically about the Capricornian and Saturnian energy in 2020 and how to use that energy to your benefit. So, just to get through all the business real quick, if you're new to my channel or haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Ring the bell for notification. Share with friends and family and on social media, and like this video, and also feel free to leave comments, okay? And I read every single comment, and I basically respond to every single comment. So if you have a question or a comment, feel free to leave it below. And another reminder that I am doing my New Year's Eve special right now. Let's see, let's go over here. Okay, so this is my website, YvonneDavis.com. You can click on the link below or go to YvonneDavis.com and click on astrology, and you'll find this here, the New Year special. And just click on this button to order a reading, or you can email me at admin@YvonneDavis.com. All right, so now that we've got that out of the way, let's talk about this energy. So I'm going to bring up a chart because I think it's really helpful to be able to see it visually. All this energy here in Capricorn. We've got Jupiter, the South Node, Mercury, the Moon, Saturn, Pluto. They're all direct. We've even got Ceres there, and I think Ceres is direct as well. And there's a ton of energy there. And we're going to have a full moon eclipse on January 10th, and then a Pluto-Saturn conjunction on the 12th. So it's going to be super, super powerful. And that energy will last for at least 6 months. I talked about it a little more in one of my other videos, so I don't want to repeat myself. And also, I'm going to do a video for the full moon eclipse itself. So, and all of the eclipses. So basically, if you're interested in really, really grasping the meaning of this energy and how it's going to impact you personally and what you can do to work with this energy, to use it to your benefit, just, check out these other videos that I'm making. I'm going to work on putting cards up in the corner and at the end of the video. Or if you have a question, let me know. And if I've already done a video on it, I'll give you the link. So again, I don't want to repeat the same information in every video because I've already talked about that. In this video, I want to talk about, well, going back to, the fact that this is specifically about the Capricornian energy and the Saturnian energy because Saturn rules Capricorn. What does that energy mean and how can we work with it? So in my last video, I talked about manifestation. And in this video, I'm going to talk about the light and shadow sides of Saturn. In this video, I'll focus more on the light side of Saturn. And so I'm going to talk about archetypal consciousness in relationship with Saturn. And then I'll do another video on the shadow side of Saturn, how to work with that energy by doing shadow work. Okay, so I've got at least 2 more videos coming up on this subject: manifestation, archetypal consciousness, and shadow work, and then the full moon eclipse that will come on the 10th. And then I've already done a video on the Pluto-Saturn conjunction, which I can also leave a link for you, either up above or at the end. And you can, or even in the description box, any place, any of those places, look for that, or just go to my channel and look for it, do a search. So all of these things are tied together. And it's like looking at a puzzle. You can look at one piece and you might have some idea, but the more pieces you pull together, the more the full image comes into view. That's why it's so important to understand the different pieces and how they work together. So let's talk about Saturn, the light side of Saturn and the shadow side of Saturn. So the shadow side of Saturn is contraction and limitation. Saturn is a cold, dry planet. And think about any place you've been, cold, dry, like the desert at night. It may not feel nourishing, but it will teach you something. And when you learn what it has to teach you, you will become incredibly powerful. So that's how we turn the shadow into light. And I'm also going, the shadow work is also alchemy. So I'll be talking about that. I don't know the exact title, if I'll call it shadow work or alchemy, probably alchemy, because I think that for me, that evokes kind of something kind of magical. And that's part of archetypal consciousness as well. So when you think about Saturn and what it means, what it represents, what it corresponds to, what it indicates, you are thinking about this really cold, dry, rocky, and it's seemingly barren, frozen wasteland. That's the shadow side of Saturn. It contracts. It's a dark energy. It brings in limitation. It forces you down into hard, cold reality. And sometimes it can be shocking, like someone throwing a bucket of cold water in your face. The downside of that, because in itself is not a negative thing, but the downside of it is it can cause us to lose hope. Saturn, the shadow side of Saturn, is depression and despair and hopelessness, because we think it will always be this way. And that's the important thing to understand about Saturn and doing the alchemy, is that it's not going to be that way all the time. So one of the ways we can do alchemy with this, and again, I'll do another video that is more specifically about alchemy, which another word for alchemy is shadow work. One of the tools, for doing alchemy is using archetypal consciousness, stepping into archetypal consciousness. So that's the light side of Saturn. And archetypal consciousness means let's see how to explain this. Like, it's very symbolic. It relies on archetypes, and it relies on the sixth chakra. So go back and look at my manifestation video. I talked about the chakras. And if you want more information on the chakras, I would be happy to do a video just specifically on the chakras, okay? But the sixth chakra is here, our third eye. And the sixth chakra is the energy of intuition and tapping into the archetypal realm, archetypal consciousness. So what exactly does that mean? Well, think about what the word archetype means. An archetype is like a god or a goddess, like a mythical being. All of the planets are archetypal energies. Saturn, Kronos, that's an archetype. The father time, okay? The, like the drill sergeant, that's an archetype, okay? And let's see what else. Jupiter is an archetype. Jupiter is like the Santa Claus of the cosmos. But in a way, that's one side of Jupiter. Jupiter has many faces, so I don't want to give the impression that's the only way to look at Jupiter. There's many other ways to look at Jupiter. But that's an archetype. And Venus Aphrodite is an archetype. Eros is an archetype. Mercury is an archetype. Mercury is the trickster. Mercury is the messenger. But see, the shadow side of Mercury is the trickster. But there's something to be learned from the shadow side. That's the thing. Neptune is an archetype, the god of the underworld. Or actually, Pluto is the god of the underworld, and Neptune is the god of the oceans, the water, the depths. Underneath the water. He rules the realm underneath the water. And all of these are archetypes because they represent something beyond the literal, okay? They are symbolic. They tap into a different level of consciousness, not the literal consciousness. When we get too literal, then we're in the shadow side of Saturn. And you have to open your consciousness and tap into that wider consciousness of the archetypes and intuition to see a greater meaning. It is a symbolic realm. We see a greater meaning when we tap into symbolism because it helps us to access our intuition. It helps us to access that archetypal level of consciousness. And it helps us to access our subconscious. So we have access to more parts of our being. We can activate our super consciousness, and we can tap into other entities and forms of intelligence that are beyond our own being. And these are the things we do when we access the archetypal consciousness. So that's the first thing, is to understand what an archetype is. You know, there are many, many archetypes that are out there that have come down from thousands and thousands of years. Usually we think of them like the mythological gods and goddesses. But actually, there are virtually an infinite number of archetypes. And there are lots of people who've done work on archetypes, like Carolyn Myss. She has written books and done workshops, and so there's also audio of her workshops, and she talks a lot about the different kinds of archetypes. And like, for example, the orphan, like Harry Potter was an archetype. He was the archetype of the orphan hero. And maybe that's a combination of two archetypes. So when you're thinking about archetypes and the archetypal consciousness that you want to access in relationship to Saturn and what Saturn means, and Saturn is super powerful right now because Saturn is direct and Saturn is in his own sign of Capricorn. And not only that, but that energy of Saturn will be very much embedded in the full moon eclipse, making it super, super powerful. And also will then 2 days later make an exact conjunction to Pluto. So the energy of Saturn is just so incredibly powerful right now. And if you're in the shadow side, if you're feeling the shadow side of that Saturnian energy, like I said, it's because it is cold. It's like a desert. I keep thinking of a desert at night. It is that cold, dry, rocky, barren terrain. And at night, in the darkness, you could feel lost there. Like you'll never find your way out. And you can feel hopelessness and despair and sink into depression. And that's the shadow side of Saturn. That it gets so contracted that you can't see your way out anymore. And the archetypal energy is what will help you to expand it out and see the light side of Saturn. So let's talk about some other kinds of archetypes that I think are more specifically related to Saturn. So as an example, The founding fathers. A founding father is an archetype, which I think is particularly interesting in this day and age, as we are in early January, as I'm making this video, and there is an impeachment trial on the horizon, and it makes us think about the Constitution, and it makes us think about what is the purpose and function of our government. Why do we have a government? Why do we have a constitution? Who were the founding fathers? Why did they write the Constitution? Why did they form this kind of government? What was its purpose? Because they're gone. They're still archetypes. They're still out there, like in the spirit realm, guiding us. But we also have a choice in the present moment about how we interpret it and how we manifest it. And so that's what's sort of up for debate right now, as we are looking ahead toward this impeachment trial, because one side is saying this went against the Constitution, and the other side is saying, too bad, we don't care. It doesn't matter. We're just going to move on past that. Well, does it matter? And if it doesn't matter, what does that say? What kind of government are we creating? Some people don't want government at all. And what would that lead to? So we're thinking about structures and institutions, particularly government structures and institutions. But the point is that the founding fathers are an archetype. They existed before when they created, but they exist today too. Not just in the spirit realm, but as an archetypal energy, we can actually pull that in. We can invoke it, and we can live that. We can live that archetype today. Okay. Another archetype is the star or the siren, like Marilyn Monroe. And by the way, I don't mean to imply that all archetypes are in the past or that they're dead or whatever. No, there's many living today. You think about an entrepreneur like Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, Warren Buffett, Elon Musk. They're an archetype as well, and you might call them, captains of industry or the entrepreneurial archetype. And so to think about what kinds of archetypal energies, in order to get into that archetypal consciousness, to work with the Saturn energy, one that comes to mind for me is the archetype of the dark night of the soul. That's an archetypal journey. And when I talk about the dark night of the soul, I actually spell night, K-N-I-G-H-T, the dark night of the soul, because that is someone who is doing archetypal work. They're doing shadow work. They're doing alchemy. The dark night of the soul has to go deep, deep, deep down into the darkest realms of the underworld. And there's another word for that realm, and it's called hell. It's a hard, difficult place to be. And that realm is ruled by Pluto, but it's also very Saturnian. So when we have Saturn and Pluto conjoining, and in particular, their exact conjunction only 2 days away from a full moon eclipse, with the Sun and Mercury also, and the South Node in Capricorn, really, really, really learning about what it means to be a dark night of the soul and to ride our dark horse, our black stallion, down into the depths of the underworld. Why would we go there? Well, the reason why we go on that archetypal journey is because there is buried treasure there. It's like, think about, other myths and archetypes like the Arthurian legends, and they were knights, and they went on a quest. Not all of them, but many of them, like Percival, went on a quest for the Holy Grail. And you think about other archetypes like the knights who face the dragons and have to slay the dragons or tame the dragons. The dragons always live at the mouth of a cave. Now, why would they live at the mouth of a cave? Because if you want to get to the treasure, you have to go into the cave and down into the underworld. That's where the buried treasure is. And that's why the dragon wants to stop you, because when you get there, that buried treasure is incredibly powerful. You will never be the same person again. Speaking of which, in my video on manifestation, I talked about a book that I read recently titled Tracks by Robin Davidson. And it's about a young woman who walked 1,700 miles across the Australian desert with 4 camels by herself. And people asked her why she did it, and how did it change her? And she said that she was very, she was scared. It was very scary. But when she got done, when she reached the other side, she said that what she had was unbelievable confidence, and that it did change her for life. So that she was a dark night of the soul. She went into the desert for days and nights. It took her 10 months to cross the desert. But she was never the frightened girl again who started that journey. That's not to say she didn't have things that were frightening, but she had a level of confidence that would not have been gained in the same way, in the same amount of time, if she hadn't done that hard work. So she was a dark night of the soul when she went on that journey. That's an archetypal journey, and she is an archetype. People who go into solitude, who immerse themselves in nature, that's an archetype as well. So that's a way to work with Saturn and that Saturnian energy, and to access your archetypal level of consciousness. Okay, so it's there to be accessed all the time. It's just that most of us get so distracted by what's going on in this material physical world. Another metaphor that I like to use that I think is helps us to understand it is like, well, a lot of people say we're spiritual beings having a human experience, which I absolutely believe is true. I like to think of it like a virtual reality, like the being that I am, that is beyond this physical realm. That being comes into like an arcade and puts on the virtual reality goggles, and then is, like, let's see if I can show you a little more closely. So I go into the arcade and I put on the virtual reality goggles, and then I'm lost in this reality and I forget who I really am, because I'm completely lost in this virtual reality. It looks so real. It feels real. It sounds real. Is it real? Well, on some level, yes, it's a real experience. And the reason we're here, the reason we're having this experience is because there's something we want to learn. That being who's come into putting on the virtual reality headset wants to learn something from this experience, but we get so distracted. It's like that's the part of the game, if you've ever played, video games or anything like that, virtual reality is just taking it another step. And there are so many challenges. You have to face all these challenges in order to get to the next level and level up. And then when you level up, it's even harder. So that's what it's like. And so, if you can stop being distracted by the whole circus going on around you, you can find out who you really are and what you really want to create in this reality. And you can access that archetypal level of consciousness, because that's much higher up here with divine intelligence and your true divine spiritual energetic being that's come into this physical reality, put on those virtual reality goggles and come into this reality. But it's all there. The circus is all there to distract you from what you're really supposed to be doing, and you get lost in it. You think it's real. It's hard to tell someone it's not real until they have taken on that archetypal journey, become the dark night of the soul, and gone into the underworld, gone so deeply into that belief in the concrete reality that you get lost there, you get buried there in the underworld. That's where the death is. Pluto is the god of the underworld. That's where the dead souls roam. And they may be able to find their way out of it, but in mythology, the living people like Odysseus, story of Odysseus, obviously it's a fictional story, but it represented this whole concept of you have to have your dark night of the soul. If you are a deep thinking, deep feeling person, and you want to experience the alchemy so that this coming into this virtual reality will actually change you, like Robin Davidson crossing the Australian desert, you have to be a dark night of the soul. You have to go into the underworld, because if you don't, then you are just a happy fluffy bunny just bouncing around, and rabbits, while they are soft and fluffy, they don't really have much of a brain. We were not meant to be fluffy, happy bunnies with no brains. We came into this reality to be transformed by it. That's what this energy is all about. But if you're in pain, one of the ways that can help you to withstand it is to understand that you are a dark night of the soul. You are doing incredibly important alchemical work. You're doing the great work. And that's what alchemists called it, the great work. And you are going down into the underworld. You're battling all the dragons and demons and going deep down in there, because you will find that buried treasure if you stay on the archetypal journey and don't give up. Don't lose your life down there and become one of those wandering dead souls. You got to come back up with the treasure. So you have to be able to withstand it, and it will make you stronger. It's like, think about a warrior with the sword, carrying the sword on the back. That sword, that steel, that tempered steel is lined up with the spinal cord, and it makes them strong. It strengthens them, gives them a spine. That's what this is all about. And when your sword has been tempered and you carry it on your back, when you need it, you can pull it out and you can cut away all these, imaginary chimera, all the distractions and all the demons and everything. You have the power to do that. That's what this is about. And that's what it means to connect with archetypal consciousness, is to understand you are not here to be tortured. That's not the meaning of human life, even if you may feel that when you're in the shadow side of Saturn. You know, if you feel that depression, that despair, that hopelessness, there's no meaning, there's no beauty. Life has become a dead, empty thing. If you've fallen into the shadow side of Saturn, the escape route is through archetypal consciousness, to tap into that. So I feel like I've really, done the best job I can of explaining what I mean. First, what is an archetype? And again, if you have more questions, just, leave them in the comment section. I'm more than happy to talk about this subject, because to me, this is what it's all about. Okay. It's not about left, right, red, blue, right, wrong, good, bad, positive, negative. Those are polarities. And when you're in polarity, you have not done the integration work to be in alignment. That's where the power is in integration work. And so if we get lost in the in that consciousness of right and wrong, then we're constantly in the battle. We have to step beyond it into the archetypal consciousness to become the creator, like the founding fathers. They were archetypes, they were creators. And we can be that too. Once we do the work of the dark night of the soul, and we go on that archetypal journey of the dark night of the soul. That's what this is about. Going through there will make you stronger. Now, if you've already had serious Pluto transits or serious Saturn transits here, this is going to be a lot easier for you. But because you've already tempered your sword, and it's giving you strength. But if you haven't experienced Pluto or Saturn transits before, it could be really challenging. So if you're wanting to know the answer to that question, you can, an astrological reading can help you to answer that question. So, but anyway, like I said, I hope I clearly explained what an archetype is. Again, if you have questions, just leave them in the comment section. What an archetypal journey is. It's the hero's journey. It's, the knight going off in search of the Holy Grail. And what archetypal consciousness is. It's connecting with all of that which exists out there, and we can open up our sixth chakra and we can connect to that level of consciousness, so that we can become founding fathers, so we can become Percival, and we can become Arthur, or whoever we want to become. Any archetype is available to us when we tap into archetypal consciousness. That's how you get through it, okay? So, again, if you have any questions, just leave them in the comment section below. And if you want a reading, go to my website, yvonnedavis.com, and click on the astrology button, and then order a reading through PayPal, or email me at admin@yvonnedavis.com, or click on the link below. It'll take you to my website so you can order a reading, or the other link is to my Patreon account if you want to become a Patreon. I'm going to be building my channel even more in 2020, and so one of the things I have in mind is I really want to think about ways that I can reward my patrons, because some of the things that I had hoped to do when I first created my Patreon account turned out not to be viable, not to be economically viable. In other words, when I am creating these videos on YouTube, I'm not paid for my time. I make a little bit through the ad income, but like $2. It's $1 or $2 a day, depending on how many videos I make. You can't live on that. So I could more easily go out, walk down the sidewalk, find more money. So okay, let's see what else. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe to my channel. Click like on this video, ring the bell for notifications. I'm doing a whole series on this. And if you want to be a powerful manifester, these videos will help you to understand what you need to do, how to use this energy to your benefit. So I hope that you will find this valuable and that you'll take advantage of it. And, share this video on social media with friends and family if you really like it. That would help me out so much. And I think that's everything. So I'll go ahead and bring this to a close now. And I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it's helpful. Let me know one way or the other. And I will talk to you again next time. Bye-bye.